And the book talks about my ancestry and the antiquities of my faith and the ancestry of my bloodline. And my ancestors were what is now Nigerian, and they were from the tribe of Igbo. And they came as a couple and survived the tempestuous Middle Passage and did not throw themselves overboard in an attempt to drown themselves rather than to be penalized with the next 400 years of slavery. They chose to withstand the atrocities of the times and continue, and that's why I am here. And all of them are sitting in this chair with me. My grandmother and my great-grandmother and Grandma Nancy Jakes, who was born a slave and died a free woman that I remember, she's sitting here tonight too. And her father and mother are sitting here too. And my great-grandfather, Willie James Smiley, whose brothers who lived on the other side of the street were called Williams because you got the last name of who owned you. And though they were full-blooded brothers, the street that separated them changed the name that defined them, and I cannot find them all. But they are all sitting in this chair with me today. I am saying that we are the sum total of everything that happened to all of those who came before us. That your grandmother is not dead, she's still living down inside of you. And your great-grandmother, though you may not remember her, has some morsel of wisdom in the way you think and drink and process and move and live. And I am saying that on the blood of all of those who went before you, you cannot be the generation that drops the mic. You cannot. You cannot. Can I stand up? I want to say to you, if you're a white American and your people came over on a boat with much or nothing running away from Great Britain and came to the possibility of another country, the wild, foreboding, tempestuous opportunity to break away from the domain and the dominion of Great Britain, and dare to establish a different kind of republic that promised freedom and liberty and justice for all. In spite of the fact that it didn't fully live up to the promise, it dared to make the assertion. And if they own wagons with perils of death and sickness and destruction, pressed their way into the inner fibers of this nation, and took something and built something and became something out of nothing, with no running water and no plumbing systems and no highways and no trains and no buses and no ovens and no microwaves and no Apple phones and no emojis and no Twitters and nothing like that to help them. And with drawing water out of wells and walking for miles and cooking over live rocks and stones that were placed on wood instead of ovens, if they survived, then how dare you sit here with all the stuff you got and let anybody make you think that you cannot make it, that you cannot take it, that you cannot rise above the fray and be something bigger than yourself. If they survive cholera and disease and death and pneumonia and plague and freezing cold and bears and lions and prey and built their houses out of logs, then how dare you sit in your nice brick house and your jacuzzi in the back and say that life is not worth living? I stuck my hands in the claw marks of the Africans whose claw marks are still on the walls of Elmina, where they were fighting not to come to America. I ran my fingers down their nail prints. I smelled the stench of their body fluids that are still existing in the Spanish castles where they were held hostage waiting on the next ship to come. I stared at the church that was above it, then noticed that the missionaries were also masters who raped their daughters while they sang Amazing Grace. And I listened against the waters beating against the rocks and thought, what kind of stuff must my ancestors must have been made out of to withstand all the perils and injustices and still insist on surviving. If we got up at 4 and we were in the cotton fields by 6 and we picked till the sun went down with bleeding hands and aching feet for days and days until we died and never knew what a paycheck was, ever. We were the first people to come to America with the sign, we'll work for food. And the food was the pot liquor that the master left. And we eat what we eat because that was all we could have, was the feet of the pig and the neck of the pig and the chitlins of the pig, because all of the finer cuts went to the master, and still we lived. My God. And still we lived. And not only did we live, we sang. We sang. While our fathers were hung and our mothers were raped, we sang, haven't got long to stay here. We sang against oppression and death and destruction from the Normus Pettis Bridge, with dogs turned loose and water hoses beating us down. We sang. We sang as the charred bodies of dead little girls were brought out of burning churches. We kept singing. When they shot the 39-year-old Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in the head, we sang while we cried, and we made it. If we survive colored bathrooms and extra water fountains and survive the separations of having to learn in the basement of the churches that they were burning down by the KKK, if Black Wall Street was burned down in Tulsa, if we had to endure Rosewood and we still made it, you cannot sit there with your Apple Watch and your black skin and tell me you can't make it. There ought to be enough fight down in you. There ought to be enough fire down in you. There ought to be enough drive down in you that says, come hell or high water, upon the blood of all of our ancestors, I will not be the one who drops the mic. I will not get here and let it die. I will not drop this mic. Say it. I will not drop this mic. Say it again. I will not drop this mic. Say it again. I will not drop this mic. Give him a praise. If you survive the Holocaust, if you survive adversity, if you survive the Great Depression, if they survive the plagues of the past and all of the pneumonias and all of the diphtherias and all of the polios and all of the diseases, and COVID will not take me out. I will do whatever I have to do, and I will fight whatever I have to fight, but I refuse to let it take me out, because I have too many ancestors who survive to get here and die without doing what I was created to do. I'll let nothing separate me from the love of God. Neither height nor depth, nor powers, nor principalities, nor things present, nor things to come. So this is my little down payment. Don't drop the mic. It's just my little way of saying, don't you let nobody turn you around. That's the way we would say it. Don't you let nobody turn you around. That's what they were singing on the Norman Pettis Bridge. Don't you let nobody turn you around, turn you around, turn you around. Don't you let nobody turn you around. Keep on walking up the King's Highway. Don't you let nobody turn you around, turn you around, turn you. Don't you let nobody turn you around. You got to keep on walking up the King's Highway. Don't you let nobody turn. Don't let them turn you around. Don't let them turn you. Don't you let nobody turn. You got to keep on walking. They had the water hose on them. They had the dogs biting them. They were bleeding, and the hoses were cutting into their flesh. And all the while they were bleeding, they kept on singing that song. Ain't gonna let you turn me around. Keep on walking up the King's Highway. Don't you let. What? I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Don't you let nobody. You got to keep on walking. Don't you let nobody turn you. Not arthritis, not hip replacement, not back surgery. Don't you let him turn you around. You got to keep on walking up the King's Highway. Don't you let nobody turn you around. Oh, turn you. Oh, turn you. Don't you let nobody turn you around. You got to keep on walking. This is America. This is America. Can we do it one more time? Y'all gonna help me? Don't you let nobody turn you. Don't let them turn you. Don't let them turn you. Don't you let nobody. You got to keep on.
Bishop T.D. Jakes, everybody.
You got this for me? It's over.
It's you.
We done.
It's over.